So then we have our digestive system, or also known as the alimentary canal or the gastrointestinal tract. So this GI tract is actually a long tube that runs all the way from your mouth and all the way to your esophagus, stomach, and then through your intestines and finally out your rectum. So this is actually one interconnected tube. Now, what does the sympathetic nervous system do? So the sympathetic nervous system, it decreases blood flow. So remember, if you're back in prehistoric times, the sympathetic nervous system wasn't so much about like I mean, if you're trying to run away from a threat or fight a threat, you want all that blood to go to your muscles, your lungs, your heart, and things that actually you need to get out of that intense situation. So if something you're digesting doesn't take quite as much priority. And that's the cool thing about the circulatory system. Your body can adjust where the blood flows. You don't always have equal blood flow to all your organs and tissues at the same time. So what is it also going to do? Not only stop blood flow, but also slow digestion as well. And it's also going to slow things like chemical secretions and also enzyme productions by organs like your stomach and pancreas. And it's also going to constrict these sphincters. And remember, a sphincter is a circular muscle, so if they constrict, it's kind of like sealing it off. And you have multiple sphincters throughout your GI tract. Don't worry about them too much for this semester. You definitely need to know them for next semester. But you have sphincters like here, here, and here, and here, and actually even other ones. So the thing is that you have many circular rings of muscles that can stop the flow of food and digested food. Now, parasympathetic. Remember dual innervations. If the sympathetic decreases blood flow, well, remember parasympathetic is now rest and digest time. So when you're ready to rest and digest, what are you going to do? Now you're having all these nutrients being digested by your digestive system and also entering your intestines. So you want to absorb those nutrients from your GI tract and get into your blood. So you're going to increase your blood flow. You're also going to increase the digestion, the activity of all your GI tract organs, including your stomach. You're also going to increase the chemicals and enzymes you need to help break down the food you're eating into smaller molecules that your cells and your bloodstream can absorb. And you're also going to reopen those sphincters. You close those doors during the sympathetic nervous system. Now you want to open them for the parasympathetic nervous system. Now the liver, and for this class, I want you to focus on this part. So what the liver will do is break down glycogen into glucose. And glycogen might be a new thing for you. What is glycogen? Well, think about those biological macromolecules, right? Those carbohydrates. So here we have a glucose molecule, and what is glycogen? So glycogen is basically taking glucose molecules and daisy chaining them together. So here we have a string of glucose molecules linked together, but actually glycogen is a little more complex than that. The thing is that these linked glucose molecules can also form a bunch of branches. So glycogen refers to this branch structures of all these glucose molecules linked together. So the glycogen is this whole thing right here. So glycogen is much more complex than glucose. So the thing is that, I mean, you probably know glucose is a carbohydrate, and if you've taken a biology class, you probably remember things like the aerobic respiration, glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, electron transport chain. Thing is, glucose is an easy way to easy nutrient to convert into energy. But what if you don't really need to use up all the ATP? How can you store all that glucose? Well, one way you can store it is to make it into glycogen. So the thing is that your body can store all the glucose in this form of glycogen and break it down when you need it. Back to the sympathetic nervous system and the liver. So the thing is that what does the liver do to that complex molecule we call glycogen? What it does is break down glycogen into glucose. And remember, during the sympathetic nervous system, you have sympathetic activity. You have that stressful or intense situation, and if you're doing exercise. So do you want more sugar in your bloodstream, or do you want less sugar in your bloodstream? Well, you probably want more, right? You want more energy because you're burning up energy. So this is the cool thing, is taking that storage form of glycogen, breaking it down into the glucose molecules. So you have glucose now being circulating in your circulatory system, feeding your cells, feeding your skeletal muscles, so you can deal with that sympathetic situation. All right, so then what does the parasympathetic nervous system do? So go wait, actually this is back to sympathetic. So sympathetic is going to take that glycogen molecule, break it down into simpler glucose to feed and fuel your body because you're using it up at that time. All right, parasympathetic, what will it do? Well, dual innervation, right? So instead of breaking down glycogen, it's going to build up glycogen. And this goes hand in hand with rest and digest. If you're eating something, if you're digesting something, you're going to increase your blood sugar. But what if you have too much blood sugar, or what if you're not consuming all that sugar that you're actually absorbing from your food? Well, maybe you can store it for later. So it goes hand in hand with that. So again, pretending you ate a big sugary meal, your liver is going to take all the glucose and then or as much glucose as it can, and try to store it as glycogen so that if you encounter a sympathetic nervous system or sympathetic activity later, you can break down this glycogen into glucose and finally burn up those molecules of carbohydrates. Okay, so then this is why one of these systems is called also nicknamed the anabolic system. So in general, when you have something that's catabolic, it's breaking down something. When you have something that's anabolic, it's building something up. Now, sympathetic nervous system is catabolic because it breaks things down. It breaks things down like not glucose, glycogen into glucose, and then you break down the glucose further into energy. Actually, you're burning up many things as well. You also do something called lipolysis, which breaks down triglycerides into fatty acids to fuel your body as well. So you're taking all these things you stored in your body and breaking them down into nutrients that can be burned up for energy. So this is also part of the stress response, and this is why when you have that sympathetic activity, this is why your blood sugar goes up. So someone who has a lot of stress, they're going to have a spike in their blood sugar. So again, it uses up energy sources such as the carbohydrates from glycogen and glucose. Now the parasympathetic nervous system, so anabolic means building things up. Like the example we had there was glycogen. So why? Because it's now going to increase your nutrient absorption and store it as well, and restores nutrients in blood. Thing is that if you did a big bout of exercise, well, you burned up all these carbohydrates, lipids, and other nutrients in your blood. You need to replenish that after you're done, right? So that's why this is the anabolic system. And also that's another part why resting and digesting. Well, what if you work out all the time and never rest? Are you going to if your goal is to build skeletal muscle tissue, is that going to work? Not really, right? So the thing is that you need that time to rebuild your body and nutrient supply. So again, this is why the parasympathetic nervous system is also sometimes known as the anabolic system. Again, storing excess nutrients and also building structures as well. You're not going to be building things up as you tear them down. Okay,